start to top. I'm going to talk to you about emotions, and human emotions are very interesting. And there used to be an idea current that really emotions were very variable across cultures. They were very culture specific. So a facial expression that we might see is, say, somebody contorted with fear, like that. Somebody in another culture might associate that with extreme joy. You know, I love you! I made it sound a little bit more exciting than it probably would be. But it's actually turned out, when we go to look for it, that actually a lot of human emotions are shared across human groups, and these are called the basic emotions. They're things like fear and anger and disgust, which you find just wherever you look, any human group will express them. And they have a different basis in our brains, and you find them in other animals, so they seem to have quite a long evolutionary lineage. And of course, when you look into it in a bit more detail, it gets a bit more complex. So there are, for example, different kinds of disgust. There's contamination, like dirt on food. There's envelope violations, which are things like, you know, my hair hopefully doesn't look too disgusting to you on my head, but were I to take one of those hairs and place it on your toothbrush, you know, you wouldn't be so happy. And then there's a really weird category called magical contagion, where objects and items gain disgustingness by their associations. And that's things like, would you wear Hitler's jumper? It also has like lifetime changes. So as we actually find, and this is true, over your lifetime you become more easily disgusted. You get better at recognising disgust, and you find things more disgusting. And you can see this in experiments, just fabulous stuff coming out of the US. So there's a guy called Paul Rodin who gets people in his lab to make realistic, edible, imitation fecal matter out of peanut butter and chocolate. And then you say, come on, you know, have one of these to somebody. And if you offer that to a child, they go, you know, awesome, and bonus, it looks like poo. You offer that to adults, and they go, oh, you know, I'm actually fine, thank you, no, fine. You know. And of course, it's also very, very strongly modulated by context, social context. So I was in Blackpool for half term recently, and very abruptly and very suddenly on the pleasure beach, a woman just sneezed into my hair. It's just like, what are you doing? I acted like she'd vomited in my face. I mean, I was absolutely furious, absolutely furious. And I was really, you know, it could have been worse. I was in Blackpool. You know, really, I was overdoing it slightly. It's not. Now, it's not all gloom and doom. And something that we're getting very interested in is laughter. And laughter's kind of been hiding in plain sight for psychologists. Everyone's been looking into fear and disgust and anger, and nobody really looked at laughter. And of course, when you start to look at laughter, you find, indeed, you can find people all around the world will recognise laughter, even if they are in cultures where it might be rude to laugh in public. People will still recognise laughter, and they will still laugh in private. You can find it in other animals. It used to be thought that laughter was only something you'd find in humans, but in fact, our closest relatives, chimpanzees, bonobo chimpanzees, they laugh. They live in very tight, they're primates, they're social animals, they live in these very tight social groupings. And basically, bonobos spend their entire day having sexual relations with each other. It's how they sort of maintain friendships and contacts. It's this kind of complex mess of who has sex with who, or sexual things. There are brief periods of the day when they're not doing that, and then they tickle each other and make each other laugh. It sounds fantastic, doesn't it? But you can actually, you know, you can move away from humans, and you can find things that, you know, animals that you really wouldn't think laugh. So, for example, rats laugh. It's true. A guy called Jan Pangsep reckoned they laugh. He went into the lab one day and said, guys, I think we need to tickle some rats. Which is probably better to hear as a postdoc than, here's a jar of peanut butter, here's some chocolate, edible fecal matter by lunchtime, I've got people coming round. Okay? Now, when we laugh, as humans, it still has its roots in tickling, but in adulthood, we use our laughter in a very social way. So we use laughter as a way of initiating and maintaining social bonds with one another. And it's something that we really like doing. So you kind of think we'd laugh a lot at jokes, and we do, but actually out there in the real world, it's conversation that gets laughter going. It's even been suggested that laughter was a reason for humans to get together to laugh with each other before they were talking to one another. And when we laugh, it's really nice. Our stress levels go down, our endorphins go up. And in fact, when you listen to laughter, your brain gets ready to join in, even if you're having your brain scanned, which I can tell you is one of the least amusing places you can honestly be. People will still respond to the laughter. And that laughter itself is quite an interesting thing. What happens when you laugh is your intercostal muscles, which are between your ribs, they start to spasm. And this causes that very distinctive sound of a laugh. And it also it's actually directly affecting your breathing. I don't know if anybody here heard James Nocte last week called Jeremy Hunt, the Culture Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, the Culture Secretary. And that, you know, he said, I'm sorry, I'm coughing now. James Nocte, you were laughing. You were laughing. You could hear what it was doing to his speech. Incidentally, I don't know if James Nocte is here, but he said that was a spoonerism. The spoonerism is when you transpose two speech sounds, you swap them round. So, Jeremy Junt, that's a spoonerism. Jeremy Cunt, the culture secretary, is not. Now, if you have to, Jeremy Cunt, the culture secretary, that's another spoonerism, but no, Jeremy Cunt, no. What Jeremy Cunt is what we call an anticipatory speech error. So what you're doing is you're getting ready to say culture when you're saying hunt and you're saying cunt instead. It's interesting to people like me as psychologists because it's telling us something about how people plan speech acts. And it also suggests that you do think he's a little bit of a cunt. In laughter, you've got your breath going. Now, of course, breath is really, really important for staying alive because it's how you get oxygen into your body. So what actually happens when you laugh is your oxygen levels start to deplete throughout your body. This makes your heart race. This makes your blood pressure soar. It can give you a lightheaded feeling. It can actually enhance the sensation of amusement. Humans being what humans are, some people take this a little bit too far, and some people use this principle of oxygen deprivation, making things sort of more heightened in a sexual context. So in erotic asphyxiation, what people are doing is using oxygen deprivation as a way of heightening a sexual experience. Now, I am not saying that laughter is like rough sex. I'm saying it's a little bit like rough sex. But it's also, laughter is considerably less likely to kill you. So, before we all go home and start throttling one another, we just don't do that. Stay around and laugh, it's a lot nicer. Now, I'd like to finish with one last point. I've been really emphasising emotions which are seen across all humans. There are, of course, many culture-specific emotions, and one example is romantic love. That's not something you find all around the world. And another example from Greenland is something you find amongst the Inuit people, which is called pibloktok. And it's a kind of fear where people start screaming, they tear all their clothes off, they break things, they eat feces, they collapse to the floor, they have seizures, they have a deep, deep sleep, and they awake with no memory of anything. Now that's kind of more how I remembered Blackpool. Thank you very much.